Welcome to Halftime Huddle. I'm Christina.
I'm Dan.
Today, we're going to talk about your first HYROX race, and I'm really excited about this topic because it was such a core part of what we discussed for the last, I don't know, 3 months leading up to the race. And I'll say, Dan, that you first told me, oh, you're signing up for this thing, and I had no idea what you were talking about. So, for others similar to me, give us a recap, high level. What is HYROX?
Yeah, I didn't know what the hell HYROX was 6 months ago, to be honest. But unless you've been living under a rock, it's everyone, or you work out at a gym, it seems like
You,
everyone's practicing it
you
or
accusing me of
participating in a
living
race.
under a rock, Dan Park?
Well, you've been busy the last year, like working on something, so
Okay.
yeah. So you've had an excuse, but. Look, so the race, for those of you that know, there's actually a website. You can go check it out, HYROX.com. But I would say it's like if CrossFit and 10K race had a baby. It's basically hour and a half race ish, roughly. There's 8 stations, uh, preceded by a 1K run. Then there's a station, 1K run station. So it's very CrossFit like in terms of the workouts. So it's like burpee broad jumps and sandbag lunges and sled push and things like that. Followed by a run in between. So there's really no break, and um, it just puts a ton of stress on like your cardiovascular and your strength and kind of all at once. So I think it's kind of a unique race from that perspective, and it's open to men and women and um, people with disabilities. It's really amazing. And so, yeah, I happened to uh, find out about it several months ago and signed up for my first one and just did my first one in March, about a month ago.
All right. So, our listeners and people who know us already know that we're business geeks. Why do you think High Rocks has been so successful when other fitness trends have been, I think, less so?
Yeah, so exactly to your point, it's like I'm not just a meathead like training for this stuff. Like, it's like like you or most of our listeners, I'm just like fascinated why this has blown up in popularity. There's actually a stat that you'll find interesting where 50% of people that compete in their first high rocks do a second one.
Mm,
And so that seems like a lot, but when you compare that to like people that do marathons or Spartan race and things, that repeat rate's like 10 or 15%. So it's like five,
mhm.
3 or 5 times more. It's like crazy. And why is that? I think I'll give you my experience, which kind of fits with I think why that is. I think it's the race came right time, right place. I think that post COVID, a bunch of people started working out either at the gym or running on their own, and so there's a kind of post COVID sort of fitness thing, and it's a really cool race to challenge yourself. Whether you're a strength person or whether you're a cardiovascular like race person. Um, and so, that and social media, the rise of social media the last 5 years where, a lot of people are posting about it, just went viral. I think that's why the race has been successful. And, it started out with just a few thousand people racing in 2018, I think 19, and over a million and a half or something like last year. So it's just exploded. Um, and it's really accessible too. Anyone can, you don't have to be like a pro athlete to do it. You can come from a running background or a strength background like me. And, there's an open division where the weights are not as heavy for the men's and women. So you can kind of do that. You can sign up for a relay and share the
Mhm.
load with like 3 other people. It's a 4-person relay, or even do it with a partner, which is what I did. And it's super fun. And I think they've done an awesome job like executing the race where it's fun and it's inspirational, and they set it to rock music, and uh, yeah. So I had a blast doing it, and I'm not surprised that it's just blown up in popularity.
All right. So, you said it was super fun. You also shared with me that some of your friends from the gym had to bail on it because during training, they actually injured themselves. So, it sounds like sure, it's fun, but it's not all party. Part of it is a pretty big challenge. Yet the other thing I think about when I think about you is you're already in great shape, um, and have always been. Like that's one of the key things when I think about you. It's fitness. What were you actually chasing when you signed up for this?
Uh, so I think it came at a good time for me where I was taking time off from work to care for my mom who had terminal cancer, and I wasn't working, and all of us get a lot of fulfillment from the goals and things you accomplish at work.
Mhm.
And so I needed to fill that kind of space, I guess, of time, um, and race came at a good time for that. But I think in addition to that, I hadn't signed up for. I know you've done a lot of marathons and things, Christina. I hadn't signed up for something like that in a while, and we'll get into the goal setting and misogi and all that kind of stuff in another
Mhm.
podcast. But
Yeah.
I think I've been a lot more intentional over the last few years about goal setting and doing things out of my comfort zone and taking some risks. And not that this was a huge risk, but you got to put time into. Well, anyway, signing for a race that's like brand new, I've never done before. In my 50s, um, is a commitment, and so I wanted to push myself, and yeah, I think it just came in a good time where I had some time to do it and really wanted to challenge myself and push myself.
Yeah, we'd actually had a number of conversations about taking on personal challenges and pushing ourselves. Dan, you may not remember this, but last June we had a conversation. I was diagnosed with cancer last May and was embarking on treatment. And I was going through kind of a rough patch. And I think you were trying to pep me up and asked me to reflect on some really hard stuff I had done. Like, was there ever anything where, I'd set a stretch goal for myself and accomplished it, and can't kicking cancers behind be similar to that? Do you remember that conversation?
I do.
Yeah.
I tend to forget things, but I remember that one acutely, actually.
Yeah. And uh as we were having the conversation, I kind of hated you in that moment. I don't know if you remember a bit of that tension. Um, because I felt like, hey, finishing a marathon with herniated discs or climbing a mountain with splinters in my hand, those are things that I was choosing to do. And I wasn't choosing to have cancer. But something for me really flipped in our conversation where I realized that I didn't want to be a victim in this instance with cancer and in really any other, that I still had agency. I had exercised these muscles of resilience where I'd taken on really hard stuff and I had done it. And that's where, as you started talking to me about HYROX, setting this as your goal, pushing yourself to the limit, that's kind of where my mental framework went for you as something maybe important, maybe yeah, it's fun and all, but we both know you're also really competitive. I wonder if maybe it will be one of your things that you can look back on at some future time and challenge and think, wait, I set the goal and I did that.
Yeah, I totally. And I think to bring it back to your experience, um, you know, you haven't done a high rocks before. I hope you do one. So we'll talk about that, what it takes to sign up for one. But you have done really hard things in the past too. Endurance athlete and even elite to the point where you were coaching other endurance athletes like that. So I think my example of using other things that you've done, because I haven't had, I've lost people to cancer, but I haven't had breast cancer, obviously, or cancer myself. Hopefully not in the future, but you never know. And so that I don't have that shared experience. So I think what I was trying to maybe impress upon you is, hey, you've done well, you have friends that have had breast cancer, but you've also uh, done really hard things in your life and you've gotten through it. Yes, cancer was not something you chose like the other things, but you were able to persevere through that. And so I think, you know, I think using um, like things in our lives to kind of have perspective, I think is part of the conversation that I think we have, or how I've been able
Yeah.
to relate to people, right,
Yeah.
at work
Yeah.
or just with my friends. You know, how do you do it? And if I have, well, what have you done in the past? And that's just, um, yeah, that's the way I've kind of coached and done it. Not that I was trying to coach you, I was doing it more as a friend out of compassion and knowing that you had, you know, you were in a dark place is the wrong word, but just, you know, you were rightly so feeling, I don't know, discouraged and scared would probably, you know, I don't know if
Yeah.
those are the best adjectives. And
Yeah.
but you're kind of, I think you're a fucking badass. You know, you've done all this stuff in the past, and that's just the physical stuff. I think you've done a lot of other things outside of, because I think sometimes physical challenges are not necessarily the hardest things. You know, there's other things that we all go through. So anyway, no, I appreciate that landed with you. But I think, you know, I think this HYROX race is is just a, you know, flavor of that. But I think it's more than just a physical challenge. It's like how you're able to, you know, handle extreme discomfort, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of people handle extreme discomfort, you know, not only physically, but also emotionally and mentally, right? And most of us listening have gone through that in some time in their lives. And so I think what I'd like to impress upon you is, yeah, there's a physical aspect, but don't forget about those other aspects. And I think that's where Christina, you know, you've done both. You've done physical and the mental, emotional work, I guess, and experiences. And I think you're well qualified to, you know, if you choose to sign up to nail this, right? It'll be painful during it, like there are, you know, like you've had dealt with over the last year, you know. But I think you've dealt with it, and I'm positive you'll be able to deal with this other thing. So
Yeah, it's you talk about the physical and the mental. To me, like having run marathons and having run marathons injured, which is terrible. That last, 2.2
right.
miles, like you see the 24-mile marker approaching and just feel like, ugh, I want to quit. Don't quit now, right? You've only got 2.2 left. And so how much gas do you have in the tank? It's not necessarily the physical drive left, but it's the mental, can I stick with it? Um, that's the part that I think that's the
I'm not
muscle.
curious about that. Like you were injured. Yeah, and you were injured. Like, why did you not quit? Or, you know, because sometimes when you run like that or whatever, like you can get injured more. Like, why did you keep going? Why did you not stop?
It was my first marathon. It was my first race, and I herniated my discs during the race. So at around mile 8, there was a downhill, and I was trying to make up some time because the first part of my race was tough, where there were a lot of more casual runners, walkers. And so I was like weaving, bobbing and weaving through the crowd and thought, ugh, this downhill is a great time for me to speed up. And I just, I was sloppy with my form and started to feel it at around mile 18. I knew, uh-oh. And then in the 20s, uh-oh. Um, but it's the same type of thing. Once you sign up, I'm not I'm not gonna scratch. I'm gonna see this through. And I kind of was feeling in that moment, well, I'm still ambulatory, so hopefully I can get through this. But it was it was excruciatingly painful. Yeah, I think that adrenaline helps get you through some of the physical pain. Um, if my children were in this situation, I probably would have been on the sidelines urging them to scratch, like urging them to take care of themselves. Um, and there will be other marathons to run, but I just, for better or for worse, I kept going. And I think that that's
Yeah.
maybe a core part of what bonds us too, because I bet you would have kept going too. Like,
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was a little bit injured and some similar things. I think I was training and I had a knee injury going into it and I was going to scratch too. But anyway, through some miracles and physical therapy, I was well enough to compete. And actually during the race, I was okay, maybe the adrenaline, but then afterwards, like I was on crutches and I was a little messed up. And yeah, and I was going on vacation, as you know, like a week after. So that was rough, but and I didn't want to disappoint my partner too, so that was part of
right.
it. But yeah, I glad I stuck with it, and it's that mental resilience, and whether it's to that extent or speaking of halftime huddle, like when you're in your 40s or especially 50s, and you and I are certainly not sedentary, but training for this is an intense race, and there's so many aspects to it, from the
Yeah.
running to all these different types of exercises that um, a lot of people that we were training with, from 30s to 50s, like several got injured and had to back up too. So I don't want to scare you with that. I think, having a good training plan and building a good base is important, and then working up from there. It's not just like slamming into the hard stuff right from day one.
Yeah.
That's a key
Yeah.
lesson. But assuming you do that right, like I think the race is as much mental and emotional as it is physical. And I think um, that's why I think we chose this topic for as one of our first podcast topics, because I think it encapsulates um, what the second half is about. Is one, it's challenging yourself and setting goals.
Yeah.
Maybe with a different perspective than you have in the first half, and then also a lot of us are going through a thing, that's
Yeah.
in front of us, whether it's a career pivot or relationship issues or something, challenge with their kids, that's a big one. The older kids as they grow up, or a health issue, whether it's a
Yeah.
parent's or your own health issue or partner's health issue. And I think, you know, all of the things we're talking about, I think is relevant. And I think it was a great escape from what I was doing. And I'm going to sign up for another one. So I'll be in the 50% that's doing, it's coming to DC again, but chances are there's a race near you, or if
Yeah.
not in your own city,
Yeah.
around the world, wherever you're from. So
What are you going
exciting.
to do differently this time,
But I
Dan?
guess, Christina, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, that's
Yeah,
okay.
what am I going to do different? I think we had a really great race plan. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, the training of it, will, just build up the base. The weather's getting warmer, so I won't have excuse of not being able to not run outside anymore. So I think I'm gonna do that differently. And then, yeah, there was the wall balls is at the very end. You have to do 100 wall balls, throw a 14-pound medicine ball up in the air. That's the light one, by the way, but for men's open, and we had to do 40 extra, so that was like fucking painful. Um, that's the one thing we screwed out, my partner and I. So, we'll learn from that. I think what's cool about this race, also, I'll just close on this, is it's still kind of a new race, and there's so much strategy and technique and things you can do in transitions that you can improve your time. And it seems like there's a new world record being set almost every month, by someone or a team, where people are still optimizing things. So it's probably similar to like new technology out there. There's a lot of things you can do to optimize, and so I think that's really cool and exciting for people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, Christina, I want to, put the question back on you now. Like, are you, given what you've heard, both off the podcast and now, like, are you inspired enough to sign up now that you're some
Oof.
of the,
Oof.
things you've been doing last year?
Yes and no. So, um, I think you,
Okay.
I think it was yes until you told me how you had to do 40 extra wall balls. I'm like, what's a wall ball? So you showed me a video of you doing burpee jumps. Okay, I can do that. I've done sled push, I've done sled pull. I can do that. Partly because all both the things that I just described use lower body strength as much as upper body. But being a runner, I'm like, okay, I can train up, I can do the running, I can do some of this other stuff. But then when you told me you have to do this perfect 90-degree squat and then throw this big ball and hit a target, and I'm a former basketball player. Oh, I don't even know if I could do one, Dan.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that?
So what?
So,
Yeah. So what I'll say is that's a common reaction from people that I get, like they're runners or there are certain things that they're not as good at, and I think that's what makes the race beautiful and challenging at the same time. What I'll say is, if you think about, a profession that you've done amazingly successful at, realtor, and now owning various properties around the U.S. and the world, like you probably weren't good at all aspects of the job at the beginning. You were great at certain things based on your work at Bain and investment banks you worked at, but you had to really stretch yourself in certain things,
that's true.
and you did that. I'm sure you were scared or worried or whatever, and I think it's just a metaphor for life, and
Mhm.
that's what makes a race. Like most people are good at some parts of the race, but then you go on and say, okay, I need to train these other parts, just like I did. So, or most people don't come in like nailing the running and all the stations, and most people are not practicing burpee broad jumps at home or in their gym. So it throws up all these like really cool, unique things, and I think absolutely that's just makes the race challenging. But I think you've already demonstrated that you've done that in your professional life, and so I have no doubt. But yeah, certainly that's why not everyone signs up for it because what you're
Yeah,
describing that psychs people out and say, I'm not going to do it or whatever, and that's fine too. By the way, you don't have to. There's other races and other things you can do. I think we were just trying to highlight HYROX in this
yeah.
podcast because I think most of you probably have heard what it is. So
Well, if they haven't, they hadn't, they have now. Um, all right, Dan, so let's call the play. Hyrox, yes or no? What's your recommendation for the typical middle-aged person?
I would say absolutely you should do it. Do the open division or do a relay or a partner if you want to ease into it. It's something you do have to train for, but I think you'll have an absolute blast. And every single one of you have the ability to do it. And there's a lot of inspiring stories of people that had no physical fitness background, like,
Hmm.
some or many of you have, and they were able to do it and transform their lives. So 100%,
So I'm still
I
trying to
say go
get,
for it.
yeah, I'm still trying to get back into shape a bit, from being sidelined just a little bit. And so, uh, I'm
Yeah.
inspired. I might do it, but I also know that for many people, it doesn't need to be this intense high rocks race to kind of live the point that we're trying to make, right? For some people, if they haven't had much fitness, it could even just be setting a goal of running a mile without stopping or finishing a 5K. Or, I mean, even aside from the physical, like, you know, cleaning out my closet. like, but I think that there is something beautiful about setting a stretch goal, working towards accomplishing it because you're building that resilience muscle so that when life throws you a bit of a curveball, you're ready and um, won't be held hostage to it. You've got agency. So awesome. Well, all right.
Couldn't have said it any better. I think that's a great stopping point, Christina. And awesome. Let's get back out there.
Get back out on that field.
Goodbye,
Talk to you
everyone.
later.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.